Hello again and welcome back to another video on football or soccer match prediction, this time on the betting odds and the prediction of match outcomes. I will not go into mathematical details of betting odds as that is already done in a load of other videos, and at the end of the day a question that for most people is more interesting is how useful these odds are in the prediction of match outcomes. My name is Jimmy Lapping. I'm a psychologist and statistician with a variety of interests, including the prediction of events in sports and financial markets using statistical models. And within sports, football or soccer is the area on which I focus most. Now, if you have delved into betting odds in sports before, you will know that there are several websites that present these odds. And for the Olympics, you can, for example, use this odds portal website that I mention here. On that website, you will find the historical odds for the Olympics of 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024, which is in progress, of all matches in the tournament, as well as, at least to some extent, the qualifier matches. Now, one of the men's team's first group round matches that you will find there is that of France versus Team USA. You will find there these betting odds, which, without going into further detail, are inversely related to the probabilities of each of three possible outcomes: France win, draw, or USA win. In other words, the lower the number displayed here, the more likely the chance of that outcome. So in this match, a win for France was the most likely outcome, which is to say that if we simply base our bet on the most favorable number here, we predict a win for France. Next, the match resulted in a win for France, so in this case our prediction would have been correct. Now, let us have a look at a second example from the third group round in the men's tournament, Dominican Republic versus Uzbekistan. In this case, we find the lowest number for an Uzbekistan win, so we would predict that team to win. However, in this case, the match ended in a draw, meaning that this prediction would result in a miss. And here we see a somewhat peculiar feature of the betting odds, at least in some competitions. They tend to give the best chance to one of the two teams winning, and hence in relatively few cases, if any, they result in a draw. For example, in the past 48 matches for this edition of the Olympics, which is 24 qualifier matches and 24 group matches, a draw was never the most likely outcome, and hence using these odds, we would never predict a draw. And well, only about 19% of these matches actually ended in a draw, but still, this does add quite a few misses to our model performance just because we are unable to predict a draw, which is not very desirable. And let's add a third example to show another weakness of betting odds, at least in some competitions. Here we see another match of the third group round in the men's tournament, in this case between Spain and Egypt. Here the odds are clearly in favor of Spain, so we would predict a win for Spain. However, the match resulted in a 2-1 win for Egypt. And on social media like X, formerly called Twitter, we saw messages of surprise that the Egypt team beat Spain. Now, no offense whatsoever to the Egypt team, but it is quite understandable why in normal circumstances the odds would be in favor of Spain, as that is the stronger team in this comparison. But there is a feature here due to which the circumstances are not entirely normal. Because in the first two matches in this group, Spain already got 6 points, while Egypt got 4 points. And the third in the group, which was Dominican Republic, was at that point at 1 point. Given that in this tournament setup only the numbers 1 and 2 of each group proceed to the quarterfinals, Egypt still needed at least a draw to secure qualification, while Spain had already qualified. So while Spain could afford a loss in the third round, for Egypt that could be risky, because a clear win by the Dominican Republic against Uzbekistan, which was a match that was played at the same time as Spain versus Egypt, well, such a clear win of Dominican Republic in combination with a loss for Egypt against Spain, well, could have resulted in the Dominican Republic taking the second place and hence Egypt not proceeding to the quarterfinals. And this is what creates somewhat unequal incentives of winning for the two respective teams. Although this is not to say that Spain deliberately lost the match or did not care about that third group match, it does create a context in which saving resources for next matches in the tournament, starting with the quarterfinal match, which is due tomorrow, may become more important than winning that third group match. And under these circumstances, a surprise outcome in favor of Egypt is more likely than it would be under normal circumstances, such as in the first or second group match. Yet the betting odds may not have accounted sufficiently for this context, and hence our prediction based on these odds would have been wrong. Now, of course, we have seen only 3 examples of a total of 48 matches, including qualifiers for this edition of the Olympics. What do things look like for the betting odds when we take a look at these 48 matches? Well, depending on whether you just follow the odds as I just described or use slightly different models that take into account the same odds information but in slightly different ways, your prediction would have been right in about 46 to 54% of the matches, and actually the simple method of just using the odds as I just described in the 3 examples would result in 54% of correct predictions. And while this is actually not that bad when you realize that random blind guessing could be expected to result in about 1/3 of the matches being predicted correctly. From that perspective, getting the prediction right in about half or even just over half of the cases is actually quite okay. Yet, there are better models out there, including fairly simple ones that instead of using betting odds provided on public websites, use other sources of information and actually result in superior prediction performance. For example, in a video, the link for which you find here, I present a model that uses a combination of historical performance and contextual information, including the kind of weak incentives discussed in the example of Spain versus Egypt. And when I applied this still simple model in the recent Euro 2024 tournament, instead of about half, I got 2/3 of the matches right, and especially in situations where weaker incentives and other contextual factors create what I call a weak start for one or even both teams. For example, in specific stages of the Champions League or towards the end of a national league, well, that model can perform much better than the kind of betting odds here, which do not seem to account for such contextual information in an optimal manner. Now, if you want to know more about that model, check out the video. And as I also mentioned in that other video, next week I will share a new video in which I will use that model that you see here to predict the outcomes of the matches for gold, silver and bronze for the men's and women's tournament. But for now, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great weekend and we'll catch up soon.